What does philanthropy, Friday night football, the great state of Texas all have to do with oil? Well, shoot, that's an easy one. That's just every day here in the great state of Texas. Find out why we're talking about that on this episode of The Crude Truth.
In 1901, at Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, the future of Texas changed dramatically as, like a fountain of fortune, thousands of barrels of oil burst from the earth towards the sky. Soon, Detroit would be cranking out Model Ts by the millions, and America was on the move, thanks to the black gold being produced in Texas. Now, more than a century later, the vehicles are different, but nothing else has truly changed. Sure, there may be many other alternative energy sources like wind and solar and electric. But let's be honest, America depends on oil and entrepreneurs, and if the USA is truly going to be independent, it has to know the crude truth.
Well, I tell you what, I am so excited today. My guest today is a man that has been in the financial world for over 20 years. He has spanned the great state of Texas. And if you don't find him crunching numbers, you probably find him on the sideline on the weekends, rooting on one of his daughters, or training or picking up poop probably of his new dog, a Clumberdoodle. My guest today is Brad Little. Brad, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ray. Thanks so much for having me on. I don't know that I deserved as much as you just gave me, and I don't know that I have the experience and expertise that a lot of your guests have, but it's truly my honor to be here.
No, thank you very much for being here. It's my honor. And Clumberdoodle, what is that?
I have no idea. I know that the individual that helped us build our house had one, and my girls fell in love with it, and we went and picked one up in Denton in January. So I'm now the proud owner of a Clumber Spaniel Poodle mix, I think.
I've never heard of a Clumberdoodle. I've never heard of that before. I love it. Well, hey, thank you for coming on today. You know, as I said there briefly, you have been in the finance world here in the great state of Texas, from everything from oil and gas to manufacturing. And so your expertise, and I just know that everything you have going on right now is just even getting bigger and bigger. So, what I'd like to do is, tell me a little bit about yourself. And if I'm correct, you started out your career in the city of Houston, right?
I did.
Okay, so let's start there.
I did. So I've Brad Little. I live in Fort Worth with my wife and 3 daughters, 9, 6, and 3. I've spanned Houston and Fort Worth through the finance industry, and you can't be in finance in Texas and not intersect significantly with the oil and gas business. So it's been primarily around that for 22 years.
Wow, man. And now, so where are you originally from?
So from a small town in East Texas. My father was a football coach, and so we moved around quite a bit as a kid. In Texas, if you go 4 and 6 too many times, you end up looking for a new job. And so that happened through the early part of my life. But we settled in a little town called Gladewater, which is in East Texas. Graduated with 135 kids and was lucky enough to have good coaches and good teammates around me, and played 2 or 3 sports there and really enjoyed it.
Wow, Gladewater, Texas. Shout out to them out there. How are y'all doing today? Hope you'll get to watch. We'll have to put that in.
The antique capital of East Texas.
The antique
if there should be one.
Okay, I love it. There ain't nothing wrong with that. The antique capital of
That's
Texas.
right.
Okay. Let's just dive into some questions here. And with oil prices being elevated for much of the last 6 to 12 months, even reaching $120 last month, you'd think production and rig counts would be even higher than they are right now. What do you think that is?
It's a great question, Ray, and I think there's a number of factors. There's currently, I think I last looked, about 750 U.S. rigs that are active right now in the United States, and that's certainly up year over year, but not close to the 1,000 rigs that we saw back in 2019. And I think there's a number of factors for that. First, there's been a very significant ESG movement. In a lot of places, there's activist organizations that are actively telling individuals not to invest in oil and gas companies, especially in the public space. And Then secondly, there's a growing sentiment, emanating from the current administration and others that oil and gas is going away, or it's bad. And so I think you're seeing a lot of larger producers, especially those in the public domain, that are hesitant to invest in more exploration and capital campaigns for fear that the demand is going to go down. Which is ironic, because if you look at the demand over the last 2 years, not only has it not gone down, it's actually gone up. Yeah. And OPEC earlier this week came out and announced that they're expecting a modest increase in 2023. So you've got increasing demand with decreasing production and supply. Even if you're not an economics major, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And that's going to emanate in higher pricing, which we've seen at the pump.
No, I think you're absolutely right about adding for 2023. If I'm correct, I think they're estimating another 1 million barrels of oil a day is going to be needed starting in 2023.
Yeah, about 1 million, about 2 to 3% increase.
Yeah, and that's a big. When you're looking at 1 million, that 2 and 3%, that is a very big
it's a lot.
increase. Yeah,
it's meaningful.
Very meaningful. So I don't understand it as well. It's like, okay, so y'all want to get rid of this. The increase in the demand is only going up, and I think it's what, $1 trillion. Trillion dollars has moved from the oil and gas industry to all this ESG, or well, not really the ESG,
green energy,
but to the green energy.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting. I've met very few, if any, operators or service providers that did not think it was prudent to move to a cleaner energy, reduced emissions. I think we can all get behind that. That's where we need to go. The question really is, how do you do that? Yeah. And right now, there's just hasn't been enough investment in infrastructure and either solar, wind, or some of these other, energy, methods. So this isn't, I think the current administration wants this to be a 1 or 2 year fix. And the reality is this is a much longer, it took us 100 years to get to where we are. Yeah. You're not going to unwind that in 1 or 2 yeyears.
No, I had Wayne Christian, railroad commissioner, on a couple months back, and he said it too. It's like, hey, I'm for efficient, plentiful, and inexpensive energy. He goes, it doesn't matter what it is, and that's the way we feel as well. But it's got to be. It also needs to be proven, and wind turbines and solar, they're not that powerful. They don't do what we want to do. So it's like, you can't shut off oil and gas in 2 years and expect this to just take right over. Like you said, that you're absolutely right. It's like it took 100 years for this transition to go from horse and buggy to all the cars that passes as we talk right now.
That's right. And in 2008 to 2010, that administration came in and really dumped a bunch of research dollars into building out wind. So you saw clean renewable energy zones pop up throughout Texas. I think there were 3 fields, and they were subsidizing companies to go in and build out wind farms and build out transmission distribution lines to get that back into the grid. And it certainly helped, but it wasn't quite as cost effective as we thought it was going to be. And it just proved to be more challenging than I think a lot of people expected.
Well, when you mention challenges, it's like right now, what do you think that some of the largest challenges are in the oil and gas space?
It's a good question, Ray. Besides the market dynamics that we just talked about, like a lot of industries, you've got rapidly rising input cost and inflation. You've got labor availability, which is really challenging, and that extends into the trucking industry, labor for just crews, getting crews mobilized. And then it's the availability. The supply chain disruption has been significant. At one of my previous companies, critical supplies and parts for our plants that we were able to get from Odessa, in 2021 and 2022, you're flying them in from the West Coast, and if they're even available.
Right.
So quite simply, things that used to take 3 to 4 hours to get are taking 3 to 4 days, if not weeks, to get. And that causes some disruption, and that goes from the sand element all the way through to the crews and the fracturing that's happening. It's just getting everything to line up at the right time, at the right place, at the right price. It's been very disruptive to the industry.
Absolutely. I know for us, we're already ordering supplies for fourth quarter and into the first quarter of 2023 to make sure that we have what we need when we drill new wells and go from there.
Well, that's right. And then that was certainly the case with us as well.
Yeah. I got to ask you this, and, I've had on several guests, some are from different cities and so on and so forth. And, but I love Fort Worth. It's my hometown. I shoot here, and over your 22-year career, you've been in Houston and you've been in Fort Worth. To you, for somebody that's lived in Houston, I have not. What's the biggest contrast or experiences between the two?
Absolutely, and I get asked that quite a bit, having lived in both places. And I don't know where you start. Both have such great legacies and storied past. Oil was discovered in Beaumont and around the. But if I were to boil it down to one concept, I would say Houston is synonymous with company names, and Fort Worth is synonymous with family names. So that was the first thing that really stood out to me when I came to Dallas Fort Worth. Is you hear names like Campbell, Sellers. Trevor Reese Jones. One of the really pioneers of the fracking industry,
yes.
The Wilkes family. And so you've got these larger companies in Houston, big balance sheets, long histories, and you come here and there's it's just a much more it's a much more entrepreneurial spirit. And it's very inspiring to be around that.
That is something, you go downtown to one of the restaurants here and you see that entrepreneur spirit in everybody, and everybody's proud and they're not afraid to take a risk. And that's, I think, what it is when it comes to being an entrepreneur. It's like you can't be afraid. I like it when you see all these things like, hey, don't worry about the negatives. Think about the positives that when it happens.
That's right. And the common denominator between Houston and Fort Worth, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up, is the Permian Basin, Midland, Odessa, West Texas, even back during the vertical wells and now in the horizontal wells, just a hardworking culture out there. And without them, Fort Worth doesn't exist.
Absolutely. I don't know how many companies basically headquarter here, but then have all their crews and everybody out there. I think that's probably, I don't know the real number, but it's got to be 90%. We're in Texas, we'll make it bigger. It's got to be at least 90% of every Fort Worth company is doing business out there. Mm-hmm. But okay, between those two cities, but let's go back and let's talk here a little bit, because you are from a small town and your dad was a high school football coach. And you have just got done written, and it's been published. And I'll let you share here in a minute about where you just got picked up on. Very exciting. But you have a great book called Fourth Down, Forever to Go by Brad Little.
That's right.
And this thing, I tell you what, Brad, it is awesome. This is about your father, correct?
It's about my father, his 37-year career, and his final season of coaching with the Henderson Lions.
Yes, and I think one thing you can say that the book ends obviously on a happy note with that state championship that you got to be there for and with your family. But this book reminds me of something that it's almost a motivation book for just a person, because what you talk about in here it inspires and it motivates the reader. I know it did me. It's like, man, I could be doing more. I could I can do just a little bit more. Or don't think about the fact that I'm 3 days behind on this drill or something. Like, we could get caught back up in some form or way, because I know there's a part in there where I think you talk about where I think they were like, it was fourth down and 10 or something. It was something they had to get 10 yards and then another 10 yards, and they got it both times, and then they scored a touchdown that was back a long time ago.
Yeah. And so it's the concept of, you don't always have to have the lead if you have the heart to come from behind.
Yeah.
The story that lays out, the night that I was born, my dad was coaching at Mineral Wells. He was the head coach for the junior varsity football team, and with less than 2 minutes to go, their team was down by 15 points. Mm-hmm. And they scored 15 points in less than a minute and a half and tied the game, 16 points and tied the game. And that night I was born. Yeah. So it's like everything about who I am as a person was woven into sports and, West Texas and coming from behind. And We all go through hard times, everyone, especially coming out of 2020, everybody's lost something, whether it was a job, whether it was a loved one, whether it was a friend, whoever. This book really, it started out as just giving to my daughter. I started writing it in 2013, a few months after, about a year after my dad passed away, but a couple of months after my first daughter was born. And the intent was really just memorialize his life and give it to my children so that they would know who their grandfather was and really be able to apply a lot of the lessons that I learned from him, to them. And over the last 10 years, it's not linear. You don't write one paragraph, one chapter per year. It just, life happens, kids happen, career happens. And the pandemic and the shutdown in 2020 gave me some quiet time to really put my head down and finish it. Yeah. And, it's been a real blessing. It's introduced me to people like yourself, and anyone who has heard the story has really bought in and really wanted to be a part of it. We've Derek Nottie, defensive tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, heard the story and is like, well, how can I help? Yeah. His little brother is an actor in LA who knows a screenwriter. They wrote a script for us that's inspired by the book. It's not the true story, but it's inspired by it. And we have a documentary that's in the late stages of getting ready to come out this summer, hopefully. And it was a producer down in Houston who heard about the story, read the book, and put up a lot of his own capital to really make it a reality. So I think it resonates with a lot of people because we all go through hard times. And when you think about everything that the country has gone through with the political unrest, the civil unrest, the socioeconomic issues, what it really gets to is we don't have to agree on anything. And I think in 2015, there was a picture of a dress that came out and nobody could determine whether it was blue and white or black and yellow or whatever it was. But if we can't agree on the color of a dress, that's kind of proof enough for me. I'm a simple person that says there's nothing that we're all going to agree on.
That's right.
And so the book really goes into, the key is really empathy, putting yourself in the other person's position, and being respectful. And we don't have to agree, but we all should offer each other the respect to listen and help each other.
Well, we have a preview of that trailer, or of the documentary, correct?
We do.
Yes. All right. Let's go ahead and roll that.
I've always said that being a successful coach, sometimes you're judged on winning losses. I think the greatest characteristic a coach can have is that he is significant.
The story of Ken Little is a story about a football coach, but it was so much more than football.
We weren't any good. We didn't play together. We didn't really believe. But then Coach Ken came in and said, we're going to fix it.
What we've done, no team in Henderson history has ever done that.
He turned our program into something that was playing football into something so much more. He turned it into a family outside of what you had at home.
If you go back to his memorial service, it seemed like every high school player and every high school coach was there. Hundreds of people showed up.
Ken's impact on Texas football is the epitome of everything that is about high school football.
It's not just about football. It's about a man that has made an impact into other people's lives.
What Ken did in coaching is what coaching's all about.
You don't have to have the lead if you have the heart to come from behind.
That is awesome.
I still get goosebumps hearing Bob Ledbetter, talk about. But that really is it. As Bob once told me, a good coach can win a game, a great coach can change a life, and that's really what we've been focused on supporting.
Yeah. Now, this book, Fourth Down and Forever to Go, proceeds go to 84 Phoenix.
That's correct.
All right. Now, tell me about it. Tell me all about 84 Phoenix and what you got going on over there.
Well, let me start by telling you the problem that we're trying to solve for.
Okay.
So right now in the state of Texas, as hard as it is to believe, every year 1 in 6 coaches leave the profession altogether. These are not just football coaches. These are men's, women's, boys and girls, volleyball, football. They're leaving, and they're leaving for a variety of reasons. Some of it may be pay, some of it may be social pressure. But the reality is, my father was a coach. Every strong leader or mentor that I've had in my career played sports at some level for at least one sport. And those coaches and those teachers teach you how to overcome adversity, and they teach you how to prepare and get you to the next level.
Right.
I'm sure you had one as well. Now, imagine with me for a minute that person didn't come into your life. How differently would it have been? And that's where 84 Phoenix is really abjectly focused, is how do we keep the good coaches and as many coaches as possible from leaving the profession? So earlier this year, we started the 84 Phoenix Foundation. We just recently received our 501c3 designation from the Department of Treasury of the United States. And we've partnered with the Texas High School Coaches Association in trying to solve just that problem. So not just to bring awareness to it through mediums such as this, but also to raise money through the book sales, through the documentary sales, speaking engagements, mentoring arrangements, and partnering with them to raise money and awareness to give back into the coaching profession and teaching profession.
Yeah, I mean, you those coaches, I just did the high school thing, and I just know that they were there at 6 o'clock in the morning or even earlier, and then they were there at 8 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday, considering and then later on Friday nights if they were the varsity coach. And I can't imagine that. I guess I can, when you're on a drilling rig for 24 hours or something
Sure.
like that. But that's and the patience some of those have. God, I know I probably tested their patience once or twice.
Well, coaches aren't just coaches, right? They're
Right.
they're dads, they're father figures. It may be for an individual that doesn't have a father, or it may be an individual from a certain racial element of the community that needs support.
Yeah.
Growing up, I felt like I had to share my dad with thousands of people, and to be honest, I would be jealous at times that it seemed like he gave a lot of other kids more attention than he gave me. And it really it dawned on me during the visitation and the funeral where hundreds of people came and they would come up and call me brother. And it's like we call each other brother. It's like you just do it in everyday life. But I really felt like they meant it. And it was that we shared a connection, my dad. And so in him adopting all those kids, boys and girls, students and athletes, I gained brothers and sisters from all walks of life. And I think it's really made me who I am as a leader and just a general, father.
No, Ken Little represents what a mentor and what a leader is, and somebody that cares and directed individuals at certain times the way that they needed to be directed and support. And so I mean, this book is an excellent book. I mean, again, you talked about the 16 points in a minute, and that's the way this book opens, and it gets you just excited. It's like, okay, what's going to happen next? And you go into it, and then for it to end with that state championship football, it's what a way to end a career. I mean, that's
there's no better way.
There's no better way. I mean, professionals wish that they all could, just walk away a champion. I know a few have done it. David Robinson and
Tom Brady almost did it.
Tom Brady almost did it and came back, yeah. And who knows? Maybe that's what he wants to do this time.
That's right.
And I know my favorite football quarterback, Troy Aikman. I know he talked about it one time. He wished he could have done it that way, but hey, he won 3, so that's a good thing there for the Dallas Cowboys fans. I want to know, how can people find out about 84 Phoenix?
Absolutely. So you can find us on fourthandforever.com, at 84phoenix.com. That's 84phoenix spelled out.com. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And you can find our book, Fourth Down, Forever to Go, on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and we recently got picked up by Walmart.com. So there's a few opportunities.
Wow, well, I'd say you're on all the majors right there.
I am from East Texas. It's Walmart played a big role in my upbringing.
In East Texas, I think there's even a football field somewhere that there's a pump jack.
Oh, there's a bunch of them.
Right, we're like pretty near on the football field, right?
When I played football in high school, one of our teams that we would go to play, I think it was White Oak or Brownsboro or somewhere, they actually had a pumper jack in the end zone. So if you overthrew your receiver or went wide left on a field goal, you might hit the pumper jack. So it's, you know, it's really what ties in. You mentioned it earlier, oil and gas and football. Things like the Haynesville Shell blowing up in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
You know, it really should be no surprise that the Carthage Bulldogs, situated right in the heart of the Haynesville Shell play, they've won 8 or 9 state championships just since 2000.
Really?
They just, so it's made a lot of school districts a lot of money, which has been good, right? I mean, so schools that were long since, you know, very small 1A and 2A schools are now 3 and 4 and 5A schools, and it's just improved the level of education and just the general high school experience.
Well, you mentioned the schools. Did you see that we operators in oil and gas paid over $1 billion in taxes to the state of Texas in June of this year? And a lot of that goes to Texas public schools.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's really the tie-in with the oil and gas industry and just how important it is to the state. Not just for my generation and your generation, but for our kids and their kids.
No, and I think, you know, as you know, sports I think are very important, and sort of all the other extracurriculars, the choirs, the bands. It's like it does help create a camaraderie, get you in.
It's community, right? And so for 3 hours on a Friday night in Texas, at least in my hometown, if we were on the road, you could probably rob the bank because even the police department had gone to watch the football game, and you've got spirit squads, cheerleaders, band, pep squads, not just the players themselves. It's a community event, and for 3 hours on a Friday night, nobody's talking about politics. Nobody's talking about any other stressors or social matters that are happening in the news. You just got one common goal, and it's to beat the hell out of whoever you're playing that night as a community.
And I tell you what, that's the way sports are supposed to be. That's the crude truth right there, because like nobody goes to a game to worry about any of that.
No.
And that's, you're absolutely right.
Well, and I think if you think about it, there's a common opponent and you know who the opponent is. And I think so many times in life, people are mad, but they don't know what or who they're mad at. And so it's very hard to solve a problem when you don't know who the opponent is.
There you go. Man, you're dropping some knowledge here, right? You're dropping some knowledge.
A lot of learning from the School of Hard Knocks, Ray.
Well, Brad, I want to thank you so much for coming in today. Again, please check out 84 Phoenix. And if you have not, please go to Amazon, Walmart.com, and Barnes & Noble and pick up a copy of Fourth Down, Forever to Go. It is a great read, and you won't put it down. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on The Crude Truth.
The easiest way to start your own podcast and TV show? Real News Communications Network. Stand out from your competition. Produce streams of high-quality social media content. Become a thought leader in your industry. With RNCN, you get to be the host. We handle everything else. Tour one of our 3 locations in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Colony. Call 972-402-6333 or visit launchashow.com to find out more.